Longevity without capability is just a longer decline. Health span is the game, and everything else is noise. Hi, and welcome to the Rise podcast. My name is Gonzalo Gonzo Herrera. I'm your host. And let me start with something that might piss a few people off in a good way. If you're over 50 and still breathing, you've already won the genetic lottery, okay? But if you're over 50 and tired, foggy, inflamed, weak, medicated into mediocrity, that's not age. That's unoptimized biology, sadly enough. And here's the lie we've all been told, which is getting older means slowing down. No, getting older means your margin for error disappears. Okay. At 25, you can absolutely abuse your sleep, eat garbage, skip training, live on stress and caffeine, and bounce back. At 50, your body starts sending invoices, all right? And it collects with interest. So this episode is about health span, not lifespan, not how long you live, but how well you live while you're alive. Strength and energy. Stick with us. Watch this episode. All right, guys. So what are we talking about when we talk health span? This is what we're talking about. We're talking about strength. We're talking about energy. We're talking about libido. We're talking about focus, resilience, independence, presence, especially if you're a high performer, if you're an entrepreneur or an executive or a creative type, if you're somebody with ADHD for sure, and someone who refuses to become old just because the calendar says that you're old. Here at Rise 41, we don't optimize for average, all right? We optimize for function, capability, and agency. So let's break it down. Let's talk about health span. So first part of this essay, of this video essay, it's what health span actually means. Let's define what that means so we know that we're talking in the same language. So health span is not a buzzword. It's not a supplement, and it's not a gimmick. Health span equals the years lived without disability, dependence, or decline. Okay? Again, years lived without disability, dependence, or decline. Quality years. That's health span. Here's the brutal truth, all right? Most people don't die. They slowly lose themselves over time. First, that energy drain. I'm just a little tired. I'm not as energetic as before. Then strength. I'm not as strong as before. I can't lift this or do that or etc. Then cognition. I'm starting to forget things. I'm starting to not be all there. Eventually it creeps up to mobility. Achy, can't move, go up the stairs is hard. That things. And then the next one is independence, because now you're dependent on people to help you move, you're not strong enough, etc. And eventually, finally, your identity. That's the last thing that goes, like you're just, at that point, you're just done. And, you have to recognize one thing. Like, I think that most people don't fear death itself because it's inevitable. You don't think about it. It'll happen. But most people, I know I do, fear being useless and being dependent and not being able to do the things and enjoy your life. So health span optimization means attacking decline before it shows up on labs and in your life, okay? Because by the time something's clinically wrong where you can see it in a lab, you're already behind. Now you're playing catch up, especially after 50, when you don't have, like I mentioned before, that margin for error, okay? So now we've defined what health span is. Next thing, let's talk about the 4 horsemen of aging decline. If you remember nothing else, remember this, okay? Aging doesn't kill you. Loss of systems does. And there are 4 main systems that determine your health span. The first one is muscle. Very simple. Sarcopenia is the real reaper here. By the way, sarcopenia is the loss of muscle due to aging. After 40, you lose muscle every decade unless you fight for it. It's not inevitable. You can't fight for it. Muscle, you have to remember here, this is very important. It's not cosmetics. It's not about looking good. It's basically metabolic armor, okay? It'll protect you. It's protective. What does muscle do? How is it protective? Well, really simple. It improves your insulin sensitivity, which is positive. You don't want to be like insulin insensitive and, develop diabetes and or issues with your insulin and or blood sugar, etc. It protects your joints because, again, you have muscle, you have the capacity to protect those joints to lift more, move more, maintains balance, and fall prevention. Falls when you're older are one of the primary drivers of decrepitude and death, honestly. You injure yourself, you fall, you break a hip. Now you can't move, you can't exercise, which means that then your health outcomes become more difficult because you can't move or exercise. And it's very easy, if you're not careful, to spiral into a negative health outcome due to an injury from a fall. So being muscular allows you to prevent that because you can maintain that balance and or survive a fall or even prevent it from happening in the first place. Next, muscle also supports hormone function, and having balanced hormones is critical for your quality of life. Okay, it's critical for your cognition, for your mood, for your libido, for just the entire range of your quality of life and how you experience life. And also, muscle as a glucose and amino acid reservoir. So if you need to, you find yourself in a situation where you need a little bit of extra glucose or amino acid in order to survive, having that extra muscle will guarantee that you have that extra padding, right? Say you're in a stressful situation or, I don't know, a starvation situation, for heaven forbid, something similar. A stressful situation, again, muscle will help prevent that. So muscle is, remember this, muscle is the organ of longevity. You lose muscle, I'm sorry, you lose independence. And this is why nursing homes aren't full of people who like supplements, okay? They're full of people who stopped training and stopped exercising and moving, okay? Second horseman, metabolic health. Insulin resistance ages you fast. Remember, I mentioned that before, under the muscle. So let me explain why. High blood sugar doesn't just damage your vessels, it damages everything, like your brain, your eyes, your kidneys, your nerves, your hormones. And here's the kicker: you can be skinny and still be metabolically wrecked. This is not just for obese people, okay? You don't age from birthdays, okay? You age from blood sugar and having an uncontrolled blood sugar situation, okay? So keep that in mind, your metabolic health and that insulin resistance. If you don't control that, you're going to age way faster than you need to. Third horseman, the hormones. And you don't need to accept the drop in hormones, by the way. Testosterone, estrogen, your thyroid, your natural production of growth hormone, your cortisol. These don't disappear overnight, all right? They erode. They go slowly. And especially if you have an ADHD type brain, low dopamine plus low hormones equals burnout masquerading as aging. Okay, so keep that in mind. Keeping your hormones in balance when you're older, testosterone replacement therapy, hormone replacement therapy can be a lifesaver because, again, you want to go back to an optimal balance of these hormones so that you can enjoy your quality of life. If these hormones are unbalanced, they will have effects that are detrimental to your health and they will age you rapidly. Fourth and last, the nervous system and the brain, because cognition is king. You can be jacked, and still be miserable if your sleep is trash, your dopamine is fried, your stress is chronic, and your attention is fragmented, okay? Because every dysregulated nervous system will sabotage the strongest body. It doesn't matter how strong you are and how much muscle you have if your brain's not working with you, okay? Because ultimately, the brain is like the seat of consciousness and what controls everything. And your cognition is vital to your independence and to your quality of life. So again, you have to keep that brain happy and in balance and in check. So those are the four horsemen, if you will, of aging decline. Now, for the third part of this essay, video essay or talk, this is the Gonzo talk instead of the TED talk. Let's talk about training for Healthspan when you're 50 plus, okay? All right, let me be very clear. Cardio will keep you alive. Strength will keep you independent. And they work together. It's not that one's better than the other one, okay? You need both. So this is how training has to change after you're 50. This is not about doing less. It's about doing things in a smarter way. So the key principles that you have to keep in mind, this is overall so that as you plan, the specifics of how you're going to achieve this with your training, keep this in mind. The key principles that you have to remember are progressive overload, still a factor, just like what it was when it was before. You still have to slowly progress in your strength training, add weight, add reps, etc. Make it always a little bit harder so that you can progress. Okay. You have to focus on joint friendly movement patterns. Now's not the time to figure out your maximum bench press, okay? This is not, that was before. You had time to do that before you were 50. Now you have to figure out the exercises that are joint friendly and effective for you. That's what you want to like keep in mind, okay? You may need also another thing, you may need longer warm ups. It might take you a little bit longer to get everything kind of fired up and warmed up, ready for that exercise. So again, this is just a safety and injury prevention hack or thing to keep in mind. Last, you're going to need to focus on better recovery management. Remember what we talked about before. When you're 25, you can go train, then you go out for drinks with friends, and you can hit the gym again at 7 in the morning the next day, no sweat. You have reserves. You don't have those when you're 50, okay? So your recovery management strategies become very, very important. So you should learn them and apply them daily, okay? Because you're no longer training now to impress people, okay? Now you're training to still move well when you're 80. That's the idea here, to increase your health span so that your lifespan has quality. Okay. So, another concept, think of the minimum effective dose framework. What you need to do, the minimum of what you need to do to get the results that you want. Okay. You don't want to overdo it because you don't want to overtrain and then you can't recover and then you actually make it worse. You want the minimum effective dose once you're, 50 plus. So for a high performer, somebody with ADHD or whatever, 3 or 4 resistance sessions per week is plenty. I'd say even twice a week is probably enough for most people. This is what I'd like you to focus on. And again, we're doing this extremely high level. If you want details, book a consultation with us. The first discovery session is free with Rise 41 to see if you're a good fit for our program and if we are a good solution to what you are trying to achieve. So again, all that information is down underneath in the video by the comments. So if you're interested in more detail, but I'll just go over the high level stuff. These are the things that you probably should focus for most people 50 over when they do their resistance training. Squats or leg presses. Your legs have the biggest muscles in your body. Hinge movements. Okay. Pushing and pulling, because again, these are movements that you will do in daily life, lifting up a box, pulling something towards you, that kind of thing. And loaded carries, because again, you're going to hopefully in your 50s, you're going to travel a lot. You're going to be carrying suitcases. You're also going to be carrying groceries inside the house because you're strong and vital. You're not weak. You're going to be doing these things. So again, loaded carries are very, very helpful. You probably want to keep your sessions 45 to 60 minutes. You don't want to overdo it. There's no reason to overdo it. You can get 99% of what you need done in under an hour. Again, we're not bodybuilding here. We're doing this for fitness and for life optimization. You always want to leave, as a general rule, 1 or 2 reps in reserve. That is a concept that, again, a coach can help you with. A lot of people leave a lot more than that in reserve, thinking that they only have 1 or 2 reps. They actually have 4 or 5. So that's the thing you're going to have to discover yourself. But in any case, and the important thing to keep in mind with all these workouts also is that consistency beats hero workouts. As in, you don't need to do extreme craziness, but you do have to be consistent with the good training that you do get. You have to maintain that consistency. As long as you do that, you'll be fine. Okay. Now let's talk about part 4 of the essay, which is cardio. How to do cardio without eating your muscle. Okay. This is important because cardio is not optional, but chronic cardio can be destructive. So your best approach, very, very simple. Zone 2, 2 to 3 times a week for 20 to 40 minutes. I personally do it every day fasted, but that's just me. I'm a creature of habit and consistency. I'm a person with ADHD, so that's one of the systems that I have in place in order to keep me healthy. You don't have to do that though. Again, 2 or 3 times a week, 20 to 40 minutes, zone 2. It could be the bike, it could be a jog, a light run, a power walk, as long as you're zone 2, as your heart is in zone 2. You might want to also add for your cardio, maybe once a week, a short hit or sprint work, just some really intense short effort rather than the zone 2, which is a little bit more long distance. And the third thing, and this one is critical, and it's so easy, and people always forget. And this one I do every single day, daily walking. That's a non negotiable. You got to walk every day. You got to walk what you can. I don't care if it's 5,000 steps. I'd rather you did 10,000. Believe it or not, even though it's arbitrary, that's not a bad rule of thumb for most people. 10,000 steps to keep you mobile. Okay. And walking is underrated because it doesn't hurt enough to feel important. A lot of people have this strange idea that for exercise or training to be effective, that it has to hurt. That's not exactly true. Okay. Walking does not hurt, and it's an amazing form of exercise, and it'll keep you in great shape. Just the most boring habits. Remember this: the most boring habits usually pay the biggest dividends. So again, no heroic measures, no hero workouts. Just be consistent. Walk every day, 2 to 3 times a week. Do your zone 2 cardio. Once a week, do your sprint stuff. Your hit training, your hardest stuff. All right. All right. Fifth part of the today's Gonzo talk. Let's talk about nutrition for your health span and principles to keep in mind. So, a lot of people screw this one up because this is not super intuitive. You have to be kind of aware of it, and it requires constant, diligent decision making. I guess this is where systems come into play too, by the way. So, again, book a consultation with us. We'll help you make it easy. But anyway, you don't need extreme diets or anything like that. What you need is a predictable structure. Again, a system in place that will allow you to succeed. So, things to remember: protein first, always. After 50, you want probably 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of lean mass. So if you're obese, that doesn't mean like 400 pounds. Say you're 400 pounds, doesn't mean 400 pounds of protein. It's your lean mass that matters. It's important. Your lean mass probably will be more along the lines of, like, say, 200. So keep that in mind. You want that protein to be spread throughout the day, if possible. If you can, prioritize some leucine-rich sources, and we can talk about that later. You can Google that. Because protein ultimately preserves muscle and dopamine function, which are two things you want, okay, that you want for your health span. Okay, moving on to carbs. Poor carbs, man. Carbs are like, everybody demonizes the poor carbs, but they're not evil. What matters is the timing with carbs, because carbs ultimately will support your thyroid function, which you need. They will improve your sleep, and they will improve your training output because it's energy that's rapidly converted. So you need carbs, but you also should earn them. You should time them, and you should not graze all day on carbs. Okay. That's very important. So keep that in mind. I like to keep my carbs when I consume them very near the exercise window, either right before or right after, just to support that, because that's where they add the most value. But again, you'll figure out what it is that works for you and when to consume those carbs, so that you don't have a situation where you just like store them. Okay, now moving on to fats. Fats equal hormones and brain health. So, especially the fats you got to keep in mind. I supplement with fish oil, and there are other ways to do this, but fish oil seems to be the easiest way, at least for me. Omega 3s. We need omega 3s like crazy, and monounsaturated fats. We want those because so low fat diets and aging, if you're very, very low fat, you can, as long as you have the right fats. But you have to make sure you have the right fats, because if not, you can, if your fats are too low, you need them for hormones also. For You don't need a ton of fats, but you need enough of those essential minimum effective dosage, if you will, of fats in order to be healthy. Next, let's talk about hormones and peptides, some awareness on this topic, because it kind of dovetails and wraps around the rest of what we've discussed. So let's be grown-ups for a second, okay? So optimization is not cheating, it's informed consent. Okay. So if you're 50 plus and you've never checked your hormones, you are guessing. You have no idea what's going on with your body. And health span oriented adults measure and manage. This isn't about chasing numbers, by the way. This is about restoring function, okay? We want to make sure that we have proper sleep, healthy libido, great mood, good ability to recover, and solid cognition, especially for high performing people and ADHD people. So, hormonal optimization often fixes what therapy can't touch. So, keep that in mind. Again, take a look at with your doctor at your hormone panels. Make sure everything is good. If your general practitioner doesn't know, I strongly encourage you to go to somebody who's a specialist in the hormone, uh, be it replacement therapy or analysis, to make sure that your hormones are balanced and in a good place. Next, let's talk about sleep, stress, and our nervous systems. You cannot out supplement poor sleep. Okay. Sleep after 50 is very fragile. You always hear like old people like get up, multiple times a night or whatever. And this is why after 50, your cortisol rises, your melatonin drops, and your circadian rhythm weakens. All three of these things contribute to making it harder to sleep. So things that are non-negotiable when it comes to sleep: try to be consistent with your sleep and wake time. If you go to bed at a certain time and you wake up at a certain time, try to keep that as consistent as possible. Okay. Make sure you have a very dark room. I believe in blackout shades. It should be as dark as humanly possible in there for so that it's conducive to like good rest and sleep. Okay. In the morning, when you wake up, morning light is very, very good for you. For dopamine, your cortisol, when you first start, all of these things, they're affected by that sunlight. So that morning light is critical. If you get it, you wake up in the morning, you walk out in that sunlight, it'll be better for you. And you want to reduce late night stimulation. So, screens, TVs, exciting TV shows, I don't know, high sugar foods, for example, anything with caffeine or stimulant, you want to avoid that in the evening. I know it's common sense, but it has to be mentioned, okay? Because ultimately, sleep is the ultimate performance enhancer. If you don't recover and you're not balanced because of good sleep, it doesn't matter what you do. It's like swimming upstream. It's going to be a lot harder for you to achieve your health goals because you just simply can't rest. Okay. All right. Next part. Let's talk about ADHD, dopamine, and aging. Since I always sidebar into the ADHD thing, since there's that high achiever and high performance and overlap between ADHD folks. So, and this one's kind of personal because I am a person with ADHD. So I'll share. So ADHD doesn't go away with age. It just gets masked by fatigue. And low dopamine looks like apathy or procrastination, brain fog, emotional flatness. And people mistake that for, I guess I'm just getting old, And like, no, 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 no. You're under recovered and understimulated in the wrong ways. And that's why you feel like you're old or like not all there. So the health span for your ADHD brain means, again, strength training, novelty. You need new things to get that dopamine firing in the right way. Structured routines and plans that will allow you for structure, okay? And dopamine earned through effort. This is very important, not scrolling. So, doom scrolling or video games, porn, things of that nature that require zero effort to give you the dopamine rush, those things are bad for your ADHD brain. You need things that require effort, like creative endeavors. Like, I don't know, if you're a musician, like writing a piece of music, or if you're an artist, painting something. If you're a chess player playing a hard game of chess, the game itself is hard, and winning it that's when you get your dopamine, or finishing it even. So again, things that require effort to earn that dopamine, that's what you want. Okay. And last, let's talk about identity and longevity. Here's a part that nobody talks about, which is that people age into the identity that they accept. So if you start saying, and I've caught myself doing this, and I try to avoid it now, it's like, hey, I'm too old to do this thing, or that's for younger guys, or I used to blah, blah, blah. Your body's going to listen to that. Okay. And that self talk makes a difference. It really makes a difference because your health span, part of it is identity maintenance. It's being yourself. It's being yourself without change, without like losing anything. It's being your healthiest self. And you don't train because you're young. You train because you're still in the fight, and you're still going to do the same thing here. You're going to train because you are going to stay in the fight, because staying in the fight is what guarantees your health span to be good. So, with that, let me leave you with this thought. You don't need to live forever. You need to live fully until the end. And your health span is not accidental. It's something you can engineer. It's muscle, it's metabolism, it's hormones, it's your nervous system. it's purpose, having a purpose. Having a purpose is very important, by the way. A lot of people, like once they retire, they lose their purpose, and you hear about them fading away and like dying. That's because they've lost their sense of purpose. Okay. It's very important to have that, especially if you're 50 plus, especially if you're a high performer, and especially if your brain doesn't do average. And this is what we do over here at Rise 41. So, all right, look, if this episode hit you and you know you're capable of more, subscribe to this channel, share this with someone who needs it. And if you want personalized health span optimization, hormone strategy, or body recomposition, or ADHD aware coaching, book a consult. Again, the initial consult, the discovery session, is free. It's 30 minutes just to see if we're a good fit and if you're a good fit for our program. And let's find out, because ultimately, look, aging is optional. Decline is not inevitable, and average was never your goal. Because if you were average, you wouldn't be watching this video. So anyway, hopefully I left you with some food for thought, with some ideas for you to consider, and some entertainment value. So with that, thank you very much. Have a great day, and I hope it's wonderful. Bye-bye, everybody.